progressing very fast. The incident took place in hallowed ground, San Sebastian Abbey. This place has given the church problems before. I sense a great evil coming from there. Something dark that only you can help solve. I have requested the Abbey's records be brought to you in the library. Look into it. I will continue investigating while you are on your journey.
Our sins will seek us out.
Gabriele, go to Spain and help this child. But be careful. This demon sounds dangerous.
Time to set the stage with the lights off. Let the little nigga breathe till the fight's lost. You ain't never like the room with the bright sauce. Hail Mary, they despise what the light brought. Let them roach niggas bleed if they can't see. Side near the TV, what you can't be. They say that murder on my mind, now they can't breathe. Take a picture of the proof, that's your last peep. Oh, I need me your love, yeah, that's just me. Keep them jumping like some frogs, so they might be leave when the sun sets. And they don't really wanna bleed from the gunplay. And like mine, nigga smoking weed on the one-way street, nigga. Yeah, we see we outside with it. Pull up to debates like we might be with it on guard. Side these niggas like bullshit and they fraud. Let me chop them down with the sword. Walk them down like they live hard. This the toughest you gon' be in, we too hard. And you don't really want that smoke, my G. With deep side net of TV. This the toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. The toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Keep that off your lip before you get flipped. We got sauces over here, we don't just spit. Too many bosses over here, y'all just legit. Put them niggas in the game, let them get real. Don't even step unless you come in with that scholarship. That economic tip, gotta make a dollar flip. And I might be next, I don't give a damn, a truth rolling with me, so I'm feeling like the son of man. Too many gon' hate, gotta make a stand. I'm just trying to duck the lake, you don't understand. Read them when I greet them, that's my best plan. Head first shit, I'm just saying. Nigga meet me in LA, oh you just playing. Too many be fake, what the base saying. So I tell them they don't want no smoke before they end up in the newspaper next day. Smoke. This the toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. The toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. Toughest environment, the toughest environment, the toughest environment to be in, be in. And this is it right here. The toughest you gon' ever be in. You wasn't conscious before us. Y'all niggas was asleep. We woke the sleeping giant. We did it. Side dinner TV. So stay your ass in your little bitty box where you feel safe. Cause there's motherfucking monsters over here. Real monsters.
Yeah. You already know what it is. Peace and Black Power family. All right, man. You already see what it is, man. Sonetta Studios in conjunction with my man LV. And there's a lot of tough riders over there on Clubhouse, man. And the brother said, you know what, Saul? We need to start bringing some of these clubhouse brothers over here. Let's see if they can handle the tough environment. And it is what it is. And that's what we're doing right now. So we want to bring y'all some new debaters. To you, they are new. But the people on Clubhouse, they know who these brothers are because they battle. They get it in. They put that work in. And so what I want to do right now is pass it to my brother LV and let y'all know what's about to go down. Brother LV.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, Saab. Once again, it's the toughest environment. Y'all gonna have to live up to the standard, and that's exactly what we're here for. Shout outs to everybody that's participating. Shout outs to everybody that's in the crowd. But guess what? This is about Pro Rizzo 1 versus Aaron Yahudim. Two experienced debaters with a unique history, but it's long. But guess what? They clashing heads. The title is Genesis 15, the 400-year prophecy. Was that in Egypt or was that in America? These brothers gonna have to bring that out. Every piece of evidence, every point that you got. Now is the time in the toughest environment. Introducing first to the screen, the brother Yahudim and Aaron Yahudim. Please introduce yourself.
All right, shalom to everybody, to the panel, and to the nation watching. My name's Aaron. That's what my father named me. I go by Aaron Yahudim from time to time, but I don't mind anyone just calling me Aaron. I'm a Torah only type of brother. I believe in the totality of Torah and Tanakh. I used to be a Christian. I used to believe in New Testament. I used to believe in all these things. So yeah, I got started with my social debate type of deal. Been debating a few people from around here. Most notably, the last person was Vocab Malone, specifically on this topic. So yeah, man, started debating on Lions Den, and now I'm just independent, just out here trying to make unity with our nation, man, as opposed to division. So that's it. You know, shout out to everybody helping make this happen.
Clear, concise, and understood. Not a stranger to the environment, but now he's in the toughest environment. Shout outs to Sarnetta TV. Next to the stage, Pro Rizzo 1. Please introduce yourself to the people.
All right, folks, y'all know what time it is. Pro Rizzo 1, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to these, it's because there's no light in them. Well, some of y'all know me. I appreciate y'all coming out. Shout out to Sarnetta. I appreciate you, brother Aaron, and brother Abishai. I appreciate y'all for coming out. This is going to be one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I am always for the exactness of scripture, for the historical. I'm a bit of an apologist. I'm not some biblical scholar, but I am an avid student of the scripture, and I believe in the fidelity of it. I've been studying the Bible for quite some time now, for at least upwards about 25, 30 years. This is a subject I've been studying for some time, for about 10 years, especially in the way of prophecy. But the hermeneutics, the textual critique, these things are kind of dived off into because I have found that there's more accuracy. Tonight, we're going to be talking about just that, the accuracy of what is noted in Genesis, what's noted in Exodus, and several places in the Bible. I do know my opponent is, I'm aware that still the majority of what we're going to be touching on is going to be in the Old Testament. So with that, I'm ready to get started. Folks, enjoy the show. Do take notes, and let's get it started, man. I'm ready.
Man, the UDL, Universal Debate League, always appreciates Sarnetta, the toughest environment, for opening up the platform for up-and-comers. This is exactly what's happening here. And we're going to do our part the way we're supposed to. Understood? Clubhouse is now connected with the big leagues. Is that understood? Any of you goofy platforms that's in the way, and you know who you are, be quiet, because it gets nasty from here on out. Shout outs to Aaron Yahudim. Shout outs to Pro Rizzo 1. Shout outs to BlackJesusMinister, who is also an association, and Sarnetta TV. First round we have is on Don or Pro Rizzo 1. Can we get Pro Rizzo on full screen?
Yes, I want to share my screen. I want to get right into it. Again, I want to thank you all for coming out. And just Give me a moment here so I can get this.
You wanna introduce the judge right quick? You gotta introduce him.
Don't forget. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I can't see. I'm the only person who can be seen right here. My fault. Please bring up Abishai, aka American Illuminati. Go ahead, brother.
Hey, what's up? It's Abishai, aka American Illuminati, aka David Muhammad. I'm well experienced in debates, very knowledgeable in the Bible, but for this conversation, I'm gonna leave that out of here. We're gonna be judging this just based on pure merits. Things have been pretty rowdy over there in Clubhouse. It's be interesting to see how it goes on this notable platform here. With that being said, I yield.
Short, sweet, right to the point. Don BYRD, the first round is on you. 10 minutes. Whenever your screen is on, can be seen.
All right. Okay, folks, let's get started. So tonight we'll be talking about Genesis 15, 12 through 21, and Exodus 12, 40, and 41. What Genesis does is gives us the prophecy and the promise. And we're going to start this round with the point of historians. I have a plethora of theologians, commentaries, chronologies, and archaeologies. We also have some pagan secular writers. I have a whole smorgasbord to lay on this brother tonight. So we're going to get into it. And of course, Exodus 12 and 40 gives us a timestamp, a culmination, if you will. The sojourning of the children of Israel was 400 years. That's what it states. Next slide. I want to start off, as I always do, folks, with Isaiah and 20, because we don't have a whole lot of time to waste. To the law and the testimony, if they speak not according to these, it is because there's no light in them. So testimony, what is that actually? When we read this, what does it mean? Testimony, attestation, confirmation, or simply testimony. You know, words that a person speaks, things you say in court, things you promise people. That's testimony, your works in life. Well, Genesis is all about that. Teudah, I'm sorry, I may be butchering this Hebrew, but it's Teudah in the Hebrew. It just simply means the words that are coming out of God's mouth to Abraham, and then the words that we see in Exodus 12, 40, and 41. That is a testimony. Let's define the word, attestation. So now, evidence or proof of something, like a receipt. Their vocabulary is no attestation to your value as a parent, or it is a declaration that something exists or is the case. I am a black man. If I speak that or put that on record or in writing, or I speak that verbally, I am making an attestation. That's what Genesis and Exodus is doing. It is God testifying. It's his own record. We're going to move on. Next point. Again, attestation, simply put, for the blue collar worker, is a formal statement that you make and officially say is true. So, in conclusion, when you make an attestation or you attest to something, you are speaking or showing or proving that something exists or it is true. Is the Exodus 40 and 41 true? The sojourning of the children of Israel in the land of Egypt, in your King James Bible, it will read, was 430 years. It will say that. It will say that in most translations. And of course, in Genesis, in majority of translations, it will say the same thing in the 15th chapter. It will say 400 years. And there's a reason for that. The issue here is that God himself is the first person to attest to Abraham that his seed would be a stranger not there for 400 years. Which brings us to a notable point in hermeneutics. What is hermeneutics? Well, It's the science of interpreting scriptures. Dr. David L. Cooper, founder of Biblical Research Society, in interpreting scripture, a critical skill to master. It is something you have to practice, particularly in an age in which it says Babel, but the Bible of interpretations is legion, with rules of interpretations and the rules. And what are rules we're mentioning here? We're talking about law of first mention. That's the rules. I've got a lot to say, and I've got a little short time to try to cover this. So here's the law of first mention. What God says to Abraham in Genesis 15 has to hold true. The meaning is, it is said to be the principle that requires one to go to that portion of scriptures where a doctrine or statement is first mentioned the first time, and to study the first occurrence of the same in order to get the fundamental inherent meaning of the, in this case, prophecy. Talking about Abraham, we're talking about his seed in a strange land, not theirs. They shall be afflicted for 400 years. Who says this first? It is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is God, right? Right. What we read in Exodus is a fulfillment of it. My opponent tonight is kind of battling with this first mention. It's either true or it's not. Moving on. A little bit more about law of first mention. When this law is applied to the simple, when this law is applied, the simple statements, facts, evidence proceed complex, meaning if it says it is true, that's the simple point. Then things get complex as we begin to move on along with interpretations, different views, things like that. A history of the development of anything will show that it sprang from something in the very simplest form. Where did the Exodus 12 and 40 and verse 41, where did that come from? It came from Genesis 15. See, that's where it began. Next slide. Therefore, what are we pointing at? We're pointing at the reading of the text of the Orientals. The Hebrew Israelites are Orientals. We are Occidentals, Westerners, concerning Exodus 12 and 40 and 41. We're trying to understand its meaning. We try to understand the historical value toward the text. We try to understand the people that's related. Who is the testator? And what is he saying? What is his attestation? What is his claim? What is his point? So when I read the text, so many others before me in this audience tonight, with this rule in mind of scriptures, we cannot conclude that the Genesis 15 prophecy and the promised seed, that of Exodus, true. Nobody, and I'm going to raise the bar just a little bit here, in light of the things that I just stated, nobody in history argues that Egypt was not the land of captivity, folks. Nobody argues that. Surprise, surprise. Nobody. General consensus from across the ancient authors, Jewish authors, patristic fathers, pagan writers, historians, nobody argues it wasn't Egypt. They're arguing something completely different. And I'm going to quantify that tonight. They all have some evidence. This is another point. They all have some evidence of Israel's presence in Mizraim or Egypt. And I'll disclose that. This comes from the Antiquities of the Jews, book 2, containing, now Josephus will tell you the 220 years from the death of Isaac to the Exodus out of Egypt. Now, some of these things are going to be a little controversial as far as timing, but you've got to get this. This comes out of chapter 9 and book 2, The Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus, who is a historian. Concerning afflictions, you can find this under the heading, concerning the afflictions that befell the Hebrews in Egypt during the 400 years. Point. Josephus says 400 years. He points at Egypt. He points at Israel. That's his attestation. And he's getting this from where? The Bible. Isn't that wonderful, folks? And here's what he said. Now, it happened that the Egyptians grew delicate and lazy as to painstaking to give themselves up over to pleasures, in particular to love gain. They also became very ill affected towards the Hebrews, as touching with envy at their prosperity. For when they saw how the nation of Israel flourished, and they would become eminent already in plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue, natural love of labor, they thought their increase was to their own detriment. They said in Exodus 2 that these people might rise up and join the side of our enemies when you read your Bible and fight against us. And so, as he says in closing, particularly the crown had now come to another family, and they have begun to be very abusive to the Israelites when the new king arose. And they contrived many ways to afflict them. And in my closing seconds, you can see that Israel actually come under affliction, under the rule of the next Pharaoh after Joseph, which I'll disclose in my next round. I appreciate you, folks. I'm off the mic.
Aaron Yahudim.
What's going on, man? Can I be heard?
Clearly.
I have a 3-minute rebuttal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me know whenever that starts. Hey, and if I could get a 2-minute warning, well, yeah, a 2-minute as opposed to a 1, I'd appreciate that, man.
Understood. Whenever you start, I'll start your time.
All right. Yeah. So for a quick rebuttal, man, I want to just lay things out. There's definitely contradictions here. There's hot and cold. There's two polarizing opinions, and that's what we are gonna figure out. So the thesis is going to encompass if this magnificent 400-year prophecy of enslavement, affliction, and humbling occurred in antiquity of ancient Kemet, or if it is what we've experienced, what we know we've experienced, what our ancestors and their ancestors have experienced here. We have the oral history, the written history. We have the oppressors' history. We have congressional documentations. We have everything to affirm this prophecy has everything to do with us, has nothing to do with any ancient peoples who weren't even involving themselves in form of chattel slavery, because that's something that needs to be put on the table as well. So the brother was bringing up Josephus, and Josephus is a controversial historian, even in the eyes of modern European scholars. There's a lot of them that would go against his writings and say he wasn't even an actual historical character. They would maybe incline you more towards the Flavian Empire or something of that nature. But and that's not my battle I'm fighting. I'm not coming here saying that Josephus Flavius was a historian. However, whenever you bring him up and you use him as credible, then you might have to fall by that sword, brother, because he said a lot of things. He wrote a lot of books, a lot of antiquities, and he said a lot. So you bringing him up means that you're going to have to affirm everything that he says, brother. So, you was bringing up the Exodus 12:40 fulfillment, and that's what I do want to draw a line to. Exodus 12:40 is something that the brother's going to bring out. It's something that European theologians brought out. It's nothing that any so-called black person figured out on their own and made the connections. It's not organic to us. This is apprenticeship in its highest form, to claim that the 400 years of enslavement and mistreatment and punishment that we went through, it has nothing to do and is not parallel with the 400-year prophecy. And thus they throw in a wrench and say this occurred in ancient Egypt. So I'm not debating against my dear brother. I'm debating against the oppressorship that constantly plagues us as a people. So and I didn't really get an introduction. So with that being said, all I want to say is that this is one of the most magnificent topics for us as a black people, attempting to find our culture. And by that, I mean us that are attempting to find our culture, excluding those so-called black people that have origins, nationality, ethnicity. You have a last name that is akin to a certain geographical location back home. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to us so-called black people that trace our lineage back to slavery, that have the last names of slave owners, and that are eagerly searching for and debating for our origins and attempting to find them. I believe this is a key place to look, and I not believe, but I know that I'm going to affirm and prove that this has everything to do with us, thus proving who we are, thus proving where our origins lie, thus proving, you know, why we've been in this state of punishment for 400 years, because there's no other way to explain it. It's either a punishment for wrongdoings that we did, or it's not.
That's the 3-minute rebuttal, brother. You can go into
Appreciate
your 10
you.
minute.
Well, can my 10 minutes start whenever my screen shares? 1 second.
Of course. Of course. Everybody like, share, comment. Make sure you get in that comment box heavy. Let us know what's going on, man.
All right, let me know if you can see it, fam.
It's not up yet. Sonetta, can we share his screen? Whenever you begin speaking.
You can see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, man, I'm going to take off. I have so much information to present in so little time. This is not going to do it justice whatsoever. So was the 400-year prophecy fulfilled in America or ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt? So these are the two contrasts that we have. All right. These are the resolutions that we're here to resolve as a people. The 400-year prophecy in question is actively occurring in America, or the 400-year prophecy in question was already fulfilled in ancient Egypt. I negate the latter. I affirm the first. Tampering of the Hebrew scriptures. So it's very important why I started off with this. I understand why a lot of people are turned away from the Bible in totality. The canonization of the Bible as a whole is nothing I would recommend. So I comprehend, you know, where that line comes in with the New Testament with JC, and by JC I do mean Jesus, for future reference, and so I can understand that. So I want to just do a brief overview of the tampering of the original Hebrew scriptures. So, and all this is alleged and kind of roundabout. So circa 200 BCE, the Septuagint is produced, the first 5 books, and it went from Hebrew to Greek to what I'm now using English in the Britain Septuagint. I'm just giving a brief overview because the text and the change and the redaction and the variance of these texts matter heavily in this discussion. So circa 6th to 10th century AD, the Masoretic renderings from straight Greek to English. And mind you, the Masoretic renderings, they started with you know, with copies that had issues, as well as using the Septuagint, you know. But this Masoretic committee, they added a lot of variants, thousands, in which they added words and they subtracted words. And if you look at the book of the law, it commands people not to add or subtract from the words that are created, because then we wouldn't be having debates like this. So I want to look into the timeline. Circa 200, the Hebrew scrolls translated into the Greek Septuagint. You see this? The reason why I'm showing this is because this is the earliest version we have, man. I'm not saying this is the bee's knees. I'm not saying that you should die on this text. I'm just saying it's the beginning. It's what we have. You know what I'm saying? If I give you an original recipe, and if you add on to my original recipe, it's not my original recipe anymore. So 1,000 years after this, around that is the Masoretic text timeline, 1000 AD. And I believe that the brother's going to be using the Masoretic timeline or text, which contains too many pollutions, thousands of variants to be exact. And we'll see why they did these things. So the ongoing story of Bible translations, I just threw this in here real quick for visuals because I'm a visual learner. Check out 130 BC. Look at the first thing you have, the Septuagint, Old Testament Hebrew to Greek. So let's not argue about preferences, biases, text. No. I'm just using the earliest thing we have because I believe that that's the most preserved organic that we can use. And I, without a doubt, have realized that it is. So let's keep going. So here is the foundation scripture for this. And I'm kind of wondering why the brother didn't bring this out. This should be nailing the nail with the hammer out the gate. So Genesis 15:13, mind you, this is the Septuagint that I showed you is the earliest that we have. So it says, and it was said to Abram, thou shalt surely know that thy seed shall be a sojourner in the land not their own, and they shall enslave them and afflict them and humble them 400 years. And the nation whomsoever they shall serve, I will judge. And after this, they shall come forth hither with much property. This is what the Septuagint rendering showed. And now I'm going to show the Masoretic text rendering, especially from the popular KJV, to explain why they would change and obliterate and pollute the original text in the way that they have. So here's Genesis 15:13-14, the same exact thing I read in the KJV. It says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out of great substance. Someone might say that's not a big deal. It's a major deal, because if we go and rewind back to the Septuagint, everything in red are the variants. So I just want it to be known that there are changes and that it's gonna matter. So here's a main one to just go out the gate. The Masoretic rendering makes you think that 400 years of straight enslavement would be happening and affliction would be happening. So the Septuagint was showing enslavement, affliction, and humbling. So there's a state of these three things combined. It's not a direct 400 years of enslavement. Thus, a lot of people saying after 200 years, slavery was illegalized. This prophecy is not encompassing a strict 400 years of chattel slavery. It's encompassing 400 years of enslavement, humbling, and affliction. And I believe that needs to be well known. And the Masoretic kind of took out the humbling part, as well as taking out a few other things, subtractions from the original. So part one, let's explore Egypt. Let's see if ancient Kemet truly did do such abominable things to one nation as we know certain nations have. I say they didn't, not to the extent whatsoever. So Egypt and Canaan points. It is paramount to understand that the 400-year prophecy did not occur in ancient Egypt. This Christian dogma has been purposely spread in an attempt to discredit the peculiar and unnatural time period we are currently in. That's why I said no malice and no beef towards my brother, because we've been fed a lot of oppressorship. This is shots fired at the hands that wrote this and that polluted everything that we have going on. Third bullet point, the correct and only nation that this prophecy applies to is undoubtedly America. To prove this thesis, we will first fully discredit and invalidate the 400-year in Egypt false doctrine. Pollution of text, Exodus 12:40, like the brother brought out. The reason why Exodus 12:40 is so important is because the only place in all of Torah and Tanakh that somewhat reiterates what 400 years was saying is Exodus 12:40. However, they have nothing to do with each other. Listen to me, nothing to do with each other, and let's prove it and also show the pollution of this text. So Exodus 12:40 in the KJV, and we just realized that the Masoretic text came thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years after the Septuagint was translated, the first 5 books at least. So now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. So that was the Masoretic. That's what this brother's reading from. That's what the world wants to read from. That's what the Europeans authorized in 1611 or 1619. I'm sorry. Exodus 12:40 in the Septuagint. And the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years. So we see a major variant. They subtracted that. There's no reason to, whenever your committee was already started off with polluted text, your committee also had the Hebrew scrolls and had the Septuagint, and your committee decided to subtract and the land of Canaan because they didn't see fit. They realized that it wouldn't fit their agenda. So one main reason for taking out and the land of Canaan is because the prophecy irrefutably mentions one nation. It said, and a nation will enslave them. It didn't say nations. So Exodus 12:40, if it's still rendered and the land of Canaan, the Masoretes and the oppressors that be, no, damn, it says 2 nations in there. That would cut the prophecy. That's why the redactors redacted and the land of Canaan. Our creator said not to add or subtract from the word. I would urge my brother to wash your hands clean of these pollutions, family. I'm sorry. So this is, whenever I was doing the debate with Vocab, this was specific to him. So it says Malone's foundational scripture. However, we can use this for his ancestors. The ancestors and the oppressors' foundational scripture to taint this prophecy. So Exodus 12:40, it shows the redaction. I don't know why I had it in there twice, but I didn't mean to have this one. So Flavius Josephus was brought up by my opponent. He claims that he's a historian. I want you to understand this, brother. This is what your historian.
Warning.
Thank you, family. I don't agree with him whatsoever. So this ain't my dog to fight, but you have to explain this, brother. Flavius Josephus, first century Jewish historian. It says they left Egypt 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. That's from Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, volume 2, 15.2. So hear me out, brother. Josephus just agreed with the Septuagint. And guess what? If Josephus was actually first century, what did he have, brother? If he didn't have the Masoretic, if he didn't have the Aleppo Codex, if he didn't have the Leningrad, if he didn't have any of that, he had the Hebrew. which the Septuagint was translated from, or he had the Septuagint. So he harmoniously, brother, discredits your claim of 400 years of enslavement occurring in Egypt. He just broke it up right now and said Canaan 215 and Egypt 215. Words of your own historian, not mine, brother. That kind of rebukes everything that you just brought. There's no straight 400 years of enslavement in Egypt. As a matter of fact, that 430-year period in Exodus 12:40 is split up in Egypt and in Canaan. So I'm showing this again because if you look at 130 BC, the boy Josephus was right in between here. You feel me? Do you see my cursor? That's where Josephus was. So he didn't have any of these texts, people. It's not rocket scientists. He didn't have these texts. He had the Septuagint, which said Egypt and Canaan, brother. So your own historian is using exactly what I'm bringing out, brother. So scriptural comparison, Genesis 15:13 through 14, it gives a prophetic vision, promises servitude, enslavement, affliction, a specific 400 years, revolves around one nation. It asserts that this nation will not be Israel's inheritance. Exodus 12:40, which is not the prophecy fulfillment, has nothing to do with Genesis 15. It gives a historical account, records sojourning, not affliction and servitude. You will not read the words enslavement, affliction, and servitude in Exodus 12:40. It says a specific 430 years, which is not 400 years. It revolves around two different nations, Egypt and Canaan. That's why the oppressors took it out, and it shows us one of Israel's lands of inheritance, Egypt. So that cancels irrefutably. Thank you for that first round.
I appreciate you, brother. Y'all seeing it here first on Sonetta TV, man. They not playing no games. First round, right off the gate, explosive, informative. We're gonna keep it right moving. Don Bird, are you ready? Let's get Don Bird full screen.
Trying to share my screen, bro. All right, so I want to take my 3 minutes and do this rebuttal really quickly. First things first, when we bring up issues like the redactors, who are the redactors? When we bring up things like the translators, which translators? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? You know, I like that. I like to bring up points that I don't actually have proof for. That's just throwing things out there in the air, but where is the evidence? What redactors? What year? What time? Give us some names. You didn't give us none, brother. Threw it up. You know, hope it sticks to whatever it sticks to. As far as the 215-year interval between Abraham and Jacob and the 215 years to the Exodus, how do you know? I said this earlier, and I'll go back to it. Josephus is a historian. Note, historian is in the Antiquities of the Jews in Book 2, containing the interval of 220 years from the death of Isaac, the Exodus out of Egypt. This is him trying to figure out the 400 years of Genesis 15 and Exodus, as you had so eloquently stated, 12th chapter, 40th verse, and 41 in the Septuagint. And in fact, is that my time, LV?
No.
Okay. Yeah. In fact, as I went on to say, this is concerning the affliction on the Hebrews in Egypt. Josephus states this. There's nothing to reconcile, because we're not here to talk about the numbers. We're not here for that. We're here for, is it Egypt or is it America? I mean, is the land America in the Bible? No. Egypt is. And I started out in my round saying, I have Jewish writers, sacred writers, all these people are going to tell you about one thing. It was Egypt and nowhere else. So let's move forward. And I'll pick right back up where I was before. LV, go ahead, bro.
Okay. Your time starts whenever you start talking.
All right. So again, as the narrative of Exodus goes in Genesis, what we find is in the second chapter of Exodus, we find the abusive nature of the Pharaoh. Kill all the male children, for example, taking the straw away from them, making them actually do a lot of hard labor, laborious, rigorous labor. And this labor falls on them after the death of Joseph, when the new Pharaoh rises. They go through affliction. Whether Josephus says it's 215 or whether somebody wants to say it's 250 to 500, it doesn't matter. The point is they're going through this right there. That's the point. Again, we go on. He continues to talk about how they forced them to learn all of the arts and to accustom themselves to labor. They made them cut out great numbers of channels for the rivers. They made them build walls for the city and ramparts that they might restrain the river. That's a lot of work. And to hinder the waters from being stagnated upon its running over its own banks. Next point. And the 400 years that they spent under these afflictions, Josephus is saying that's where they were, being afflicted. Genesis 15, and he said to Abram, this is the attestation of God. Know for sure that your seed shall be a stranger in the land, not theirs. What are we going to do? Overlook God's testimony? We're going to just, throw it out the window? We can't do that. That's the idiocracy of this. It's asinine on a whole nother type of level. It's like, do God know what he's talking about? Can God count? That's what I want to know. And so Josephus is over here counting. But what he doesn't do is say it wasn't Egypt, but rather it was in a foreign place called America before America even existed. That's what's amazing to me about this debate. And that's why I took it. And they shall serve them 400 years. Next point. Here's another Jewish author. Now, these are Jews. Giva ben Pasia. What does he say? I'll get right to the point. And he says, I too will cite proof to you only from the Torah, as it is stated. And the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years, Exodus 12 and 40, during which they were enslaved to Egypt. Why didn't it say America? Let's get it wrong. These are not Americans. They engaged in hard manual labor. Give us our wages for the work we perform by 600,000 men above the age of 20, not counting the women and children. See Exodus 12 and 37. And this comes from, and they tell you that they were enslaved for 430 years. Sanhedrin 91a. This is written by the William Davidson Talmud, Korean Steinsaltz. Next point. That's 2. Continue. This is from the Ramban, Gamaliel, famous Jew, third witness. Continue to explain for the reason for the matzah. The matzah is the unleavened bread. Is because our forefathers were redeemed from Egypt, as it is stated, and they baked that they took out of Egypt as cakes of matzah, for it was not leavened. God tells them, don't put leaven in it. You ain't got time. You got to cook, roast what you're going to roast. Bring your bread with you. You out of here this night. Because that was the time that God had to visit them, as Joseph stated in the 50th chapter, when he says, God will surely visit you in Genesis 50. And when you leave here, take my bones with you. Exodus 12 and 39. The reason for the bitter herbs is because Egyptians embittered our forefathers' lives in Egypt. They embittered their lives in Egypt, as it is stated, and they embittered their lives with hard service in mortar and brick and all manner of service in the field, and all the service that made them serve with rigor. Third witness. And we can just keep on going down the whole kabbalah.org, and all the Jewish writers all say the same one thing. I'm just going to get past this one. Just pseudo-philo. Let's talk about it. Biblical antiquities traces biblical history from Adam to David and from the date of his writings, and they just go right on down the line talking about the time from Adam all the way down slam to the time of Jesus, and they talk about Moses and Amram. And what do they say? Indeed, your sons will dwell in a land not their own, and will be brought in bondage and afflicted 400 years. Is that America? And behold, from the time the word of God was spoke to Abraham, there were 350 years. That's a little bit more than Joseph. And from the time when they began to be slaves in Egypt, about 130 years. That's what pseudo-philo says. But here's the issue. You know what's the commonality in all talking? It's in Egypt. Yikes. Not America. Oh, last point. Well, there's the math. I won't bring that up. When y'all look at this debate again, y'all can check it out. Demetrius, earliest datable Jewish author who is in Greek, in Helen, around the 3rd century BC. There are 6 fragments of his writings. 5 of the fragments are preserved in Eusebius's book, Preparation of the Gospel. One other fragment found in the Clement of Alexandria's book, Stromata. Demetrius' chronology reflects the work of the Septuagint, written a century earlier. He existed around the time the Septuagint was out. But he doesn't say what you're saying. He doesn't say they had some kind of aim to tent the prophecy that God told Abraham. How are you going to do that? None of these redactors or scholars, and even these people mentioned here, had a chance to get on the Septuagint. Sorry, there's fragments. Fragment says, fragment 2, but Joseph, he says, already in Egypt. That's what the Bible says. 39, and they go to counting. They talk about the time, about 3,624 years from the deluge until Jacob. That's what the Bible says. 1,360 years. I need somebody to mute up for me, please. Pause my time, please. I need somebody to mute up. My panel. Sarnetta.
Yo, Sarnetta. Yo, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm here.
What's up, yo?
Can you mute Aaron because he got some background noise? All right, go ahead. Pro Rizzo, 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
That's what I rebut. And what we see here with this particular writer is they are calculating. If you want to talk about math, let's talk about what the people are actually doing with math. They're calculating from the deluge all the way down to Jacob, all the way down to Canaan, all the way down to the point, and they tell you the subtraction from 360 from 3,624 years results in a total of 2,264 years between Adam and the flood. Did you know that? I didn't. This is only 2 years difference from the Septuagint, which is probably due to the tradition of Genesis 11:10. There's something there in Genesis 11:10. There are 215 years from Abraham's entrance into Canaan to Egypt. And that means they stayed in Egypt at most was 215 years and at least 185 years. Their stay, part of this. Of course, there's more. See, the whole point about this is they're all pointing at Egypt. Don't matter about the time. The time was clearly stated. These guys are trying to run down the fact that, okay, where did they get this time from? Can we figure out how to calculate? What is the date of Adam? That's what they're doing. They're researchers. They're students, as I am. Hippolymus, another witness, another Jewish writer, composed a book about the history of Israel from Moses to Slow-Mo, King Solomon. Prior to the 1st century BC, there are only 5 fragments that would have been preserved by the Alexander Polyhistorist book on the Jews, which are quoted by Eusebius and Clement of Alexandria. The fragment says, fragment 2, Joshua, son of Nun, prophesied for years. He lived 110 years. He pitched at the sacred tabernacle in Shiloh And after this, Samuel the prophet, then by the will of God, and he goes on to say, and I'm going to just pass this point because we really don't have a lot of whole time to talk about these fragments. And he'll get into fragment 5. They'll start talking about the year of Ptolemy there in Egypt. Why Egypt? Because historically Egypt existed. That's the simplest point. When we're talking about law of first mention, it's mentioned for a reason. And then they go ahead to talk about more fragments. Talks about 1738, right here at the bottom, which is close to the Septuagint's dating as time for creation. And it just gets thicker from there. All right, folks. I appreciate you. I'm off the mic.
Aaron Yahudim, you're up.
All right, man, I'm going. So for my 3-minute rebuttal, I'm going to share some slides first. So let me know when my screen sharing, please. And my apologies for going off mute, man. I think my headset disconnected.
Understood.
I don't see your screen yet.
All right, I'm sharing it now. Are you seeing it?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right, so for my 3-minute rebuttal, and I take it that it's going to start now. The brother keeps saying, he keeps and continually, you know, he won't stop saying that so many people are affirming that enslavement happened in Egypt. Brother, that's not the thesis. You see a number, you see a numerical value in the title. You have to affirm, these scholars have to affirm, and your biblical hermeneutics have to affirm that 400 years of enslavement occurred in ancient Egypt. So to rebuttal what you were saying about, you kept saying I have to show 215 years. We use the biblical hermeneutics, brother. A lot of people have their ages in here, so I'm going to run through it real quick. The 215 years in ancient Canaan, and it's not exact, this is roughly, and there are scholars that do agree with that, primarily Josephus, like I just shared. And I wonder why you didn't hit on that, brother. Josephus said 215 years in Canaan, 215 years in Egypt, and I showed the source for it. So he disagrees with you emphatically. 215 years in Egypt. Abram received his promise to have children and to get greatly multiplied and to receive the land of Canaan, which ended up being Jerusalem, at age 75. He dies at 100. Isaac had Jacob at 60, Dawn. And then Jacob was 15 when Abram died. So that's 115 years with the biblical hermeneutics proving that they were in Canaan. Jacob entered into Egypt. He was 130. So that's 215 years in Canaan, Dawn. And then 130, Jacob plus 100 equals 230. We have the scriptures and everything to verify this. You know this. I know this. Everybody knows this. It's not something I'm just pulling out of thin air. Everyone knows this, but it's getting shunned on. 230 minus 15, the age discrepancy would equal 215. So, and then the 215 years in ancient Egypt, Dawn, we understand that Joseph sent for the 70 souls, brother. We have the hermeneutics. I believe it's Genesis 46, and it goes on down, brother. It continues to show us. Numbers speaks about it. I believe Chronicles speaks about the numbering of the genealogies. We can piece it together all day long. So I'm not trying to spend too much time on it. But we know that Moses left at 80. So around the time Moses was born, according to Exodus 1, we know that a Pharaoh didn't know. Joseph rose up and started to mistreat them. That's the only logical place you can start affliction. And guess what? You get 80 years there, brother. You might. 215 years were spent in ancient Egypt, according to the biblical hermeneutics, roughly that, and multiple other scholars, like your scholar Josephus said, and only maybe 80 years of that was affliction. So how does that encompass 400 years of enslavement, brother? We really need to know that. Retracing Moses' paternal lineage, and this is still my rebuttal to you, Dawn. We have Kohath, Amram, and Moses. You understand that Levi entered into Egypt whenever Joseph sent for them, and he had what? He had his son Kohath, who was Moses' great grandfather. Kohath had Amram. Amram had Moses. Moses left at 80. Brother, that's 3 generations. It's not possible to span them out to 430 years. So Exodus 6:16 shows us that that Kohath and Levi entered, and the life of Levi was 137. Exodus 6:18 shows Amram, Issachar, Shebron, and Oziel, and the years of the life of Kohath was 133 years. Thank you. But All right, and if I can get a 2-minute warning. So that's just basically letting you know, Dawn, because you said, how do I know? Can you prove this? Bro, not only can I prove this, you could prove this too, but I feel like you're looking where you want to look, brother. We can all prove this. You know, Exodus 6:20 shows that the life of Amram, who was what? Moses' father, was 132 years. Now, let's just basically, you know, make this make sense. Genesis 46, Dawn, and our people. It shows in verse 5, it shows that Jacob rose up and the sons of Israel took up their father and the baggage and their wives on the wagons, which Joseph sent to take them. And they took up their gods and all their property, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan. They came into the land of Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. You see Egypt, you see Canaan, and we have the genealogical hermeneutics and the scriptures to match their birth dates to when they died. That proves, bro, that 430 years couldn't have possibly spent in one land called Egypt. That's why we're affirming that the Masoretes were polluters. They said 430 years in just Egypt, stripping the organic of Egypt and Canaan. But just with Genesis 46, we can show the sojourning between Canaan and Egypt is hermeneutic, bro. So let's keep going. Genesis 46, going with the paternal lineage. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari entered into Egypt from Canaan. Now, here's the basic math. Kohath died at 133, Don. Amram died at 132. Moses led Israel out of Egypt at 80. If you add these numbers up, you merely get 345 years, and that's stretching that out as far as you can go. So the bottom says, and you only get 345 years on the assumption that each man had his son on the day he died. We're not getting nowhere close to 400 years. Don, you have a slippery slope, brother. You claim 400 years happened in ancient Egypt. However, Kohath entered into Egypt first, starting their sojourning in Egypt. Moses led them out. There was only one generation in between them two, brother. It's impossible. That debunks you again. Main points of contention: chronology, history, basic math, biblical evidence, European influence, and genealogy. European influence, as you can see on the picture to the right, they're claiming they were the white people in Egypt getting beat with a SPF, and somehow they spent 400 years there, completely discrediting ours. I believe that there was a movie called The 10 Commandments or something like that. They repeatedly kept saying 400 years of slavery, 400 years of slavery, because they're ingraining it in your brain. You have to be really, really, really distant from understanding, even from your own people, to give the credit to them. So we know that the oppression, enslavement, and humbling and afflicting occurred here. Debunking evidence. Exodus 12:40 is not prophetic fulfillment, like the brother keeps trying to bring out. That's not showing prophecy. It's proven merely as a historical recording. It's backed by multiple witnesses and not a hint of prophecy in this passage. Don, what do I mean by that? The prophecy says enslavement, humbling, afflicting, 400 years. Exodus 12:40 says none of that. It says 430 years, and then it says sojourning, and then the original said 2 nations. So it's done. You can't use that. It doesn't match whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it contradicts. That's how bad it is. It's a contradiction. 2 nations, sojourning, not affliction, not humbling, you know, and 430 years in 2 nations, as opposed to 401. That's killed. So Exodus 12:40, we see the redaction again because it's important. They redacted in the land of Canaan. Egypt and Canaan are 2 different nations. The prophecy irrefutably mentions 1 nation. Egypt and Canaan are 2 different nations of people, and we can understand this from a plethora of ways. I have to keep hurrying. Fam, I got to get through this. I have a lot, and I doubt I'm going to get through it. So rebuking point number 3, a land not their own. Prophecy states that the nation in question would not be of Israel's inheritance. Canaan was literally Israel's inheritance, and it's mentioned in this prophecy. Genesis 15:18, the land given to Israel in the same day, it said, from the river of Egypt, which most folks would say the Nile, including it's included in the land a lot. It says from the great river Euphrates to the river of Egypt. So if this prophecy was supposed to happen in the land not that wasn't their own, Dawn, why were they living in a portion of it which was their literal inheritance? Again, that's called a contradiction. It's not even, I'm serving you straight shots. I'm not, you know, shooting around you, bro. This is a nice grouping. You know what I'm saying? I would even say a 1-inch grouping of shots at this point. And they kill shots, man. So Genesis 15:18 says, in that day, y'all made a covenant with Abram, saying, to thy seed, I will give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. So, yeah, you can't say that this is a land not your own that this happened in. The basic math is erroneous. 430 does not equate to 400. I shouldn't have to be preaching about that. 215 does not equate to 400. 80 does not equate to 400. And the reason why I put 80 on there is because that's the time Moses was born, and that's pretty much all that you can give to affliction, hard servitude, and enslavement in ancient Egypt. Maybe that, according to the biblical hermeneutics, nowhere near 400. So one nation also does not equate to two, which we see two nations in Exodus 12:40, which was taken out. We see one nation in the prophecy. No 400 years of enslavement and affliction. So sojourning and free will traveling is not enslavement and affliction. The Kemetic recordings, the indigenous recordings, do not attest to enslaving a nation for 400 years. Neither does Orthodox history. It's where are you getting this from, brother? Where's our oppressors getting this from? It doesn't exist, but ours exists here. This is us. You know, this is replacement theory 101. So debt service, indentured servitude, prisoners of war. This was forms of servitude back in antiquity from a lot of different indigenous peoples. And then these people came along and they created chattel slavery, selling people as human property, things of that nature. It's not the same thing. History does not agree. Number 6, the paternal lineage discredits you already. Now we have up to 6 debunking points already. 3 generations, Kohath, Amram, Moses, irrefutably debunks the 400-year in Egypt doctrine because they couldn't have possibly spanned out 400 years, brother, especially with their death dates on there. More unfulfilled prophecy. Genesis 15:14 in the Septuagint, it says, and the nation whomsoever they shall serve I will judge, and after this they shall come forth hither with much property. That's another redaction. The Masoretes took out hither because that implies that whatever substance that they left with, they must come back to this place with. So that did not occur in antiquity. No proof of great property substance being brought back hither from Egypt back into Jerusalem. We don't see Joshua talking about it. We don't see Caleb talking about it. That's not affirmed. And hither is another of thousands of variants that the MT, that the Masoretic text redactors subtracted from the original Hebrew scriptures. Pollutions on pollutions. We're not stupid, people. We're really not. Summary: we have undoubtedly invalidated in the contrived doctrine that states this prophecy occurred in ancient Egypt and or Canaan. We have done so using math, history, biblical data, and hermeneutics, genealogy, basic logic. We brought sources even from primary sources. If you are a so-called Bible believer, this is your primary source. Stand on your daggone square. If you claim these your ancestors, that's your history. History equates to what your ancestors recorded. Stand on your square. Stop going to Josephus. Don't go to all these other folks, man. So let's keep going. Genesis 15. I just found this funny. Verse 13, it mysteriously references this land. That's why we say America, because Abram didn't know this land, nor did his immediate seed have knowledge of this land. It couldn't have been Egypt because Abram just came from Egypt with Sarah. So why would the creator, knowing that he knew Egypt and he just came from Egypt, call Egypt a land not their own mysteriously? And why a few verses down in verse 18, it says from the river of Egypt. It, excuse me, it name drops Egypt a few rivers down. But you want me to believe verse 13 speaks about Egypt? But why? Who would do that? Who would do that whatsoever? He would have just said the 400 years is going to happen to your seed in Egypt, because Abram knew Egypt. He just came from it. And then on down, it shows from the river Egypt. That makes no logical sense whatsoever. So part 2, America in the 400 years. Hey, LV, you didn't say my 2-minute warning yet, right?
No, it hasn't come up yet.
My man. So part 2, America in the 400 years. So I'm giving you guys past, present, and future. We're going to get into all of this. And I'm not giving you any soliloquies. I'm not preaching. I'm not throwing around random sources from people that could or could not be a historical figure. You know what I'm saying? I'm standing on my square. I'm bringing y'all biblical hermeneutics. I believe in Torah and Tanakh. I believe that we are the people because this 400-year prophecy applies to us. Thank you, brother. This 400-year prophecy applies to us. That's why our oppressors have done so much to discredit us. If you are a so-called black person looking for origins, if you have no origins, that means that whoever you believe your creator is, that means your ancestors messed up in the past so bad they broke their covenant, they went back on their word, that there was a punishment. That's the system of legalities worldwide. So you can't be upset at the creator, be upset at your lawmakers, be upset at the police, be upset at your boss for instituting punishments and consequences. That's all we're going through. So if you're looking for your origins, they right here, and our oppressors know it. That's why they're doing so much, and that's why the world is changing as we speak. Let's get into part 2, America in the 400 years. After undoubtedly proven it didn't occur in ancient Egypt, couldn't have possibly, not even the math. Let's just use the math alone. You're cut, it's done. So Genesis 15, it shows that in this nation that is not our own, that they will be enslaved, afflicted, and humble for 400 years. So let's just prove that point. All right. In closing, here's the Jacenius Hebrew Chaldee lexicon. So here's a lexicon of what affliction means. Affliction, I believe it's the ana, A-N-A, and it says to bestow labor upon anything, to exercise oneself in anything. What's interesting is number 2, to be afflicted, depressed, oppressed. And then, what's interesting is bullet point 1. It says, especially as it appears to till the ground, to bring the earth into cultivation, whence with a pharaoh. A pharaoh is a backhoe. So what the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon is saying, that afflict means the first definition is to bestow labor to the point that you're cultivating the ground, especially the earth, with a backhoe. You convince us and our ancestors we did not do that. And mind you, that's just one portion of humbling, affliction, and enslavement. We know the enslavement part. We know that affliction mainly encompasses cultivating the earth, you know, and the humbling portion, we know without a doubt we have had 400 years encompassing all of that here. Brother, I have yet to even hear you read Genesis 15, 13 through 14. I could be mistaken. I have yet to hear you read that, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Don Burr, bottom of the third.
Yes, sir. All right, so again, folks, just on a rebuttal tip, this debate is about whether America is the place that God was speaking to Abraham about, or Egypt. So I'm going to kind of come out of that for just a moment. And since you mentioned it, I want to go to and I'm hoping I've got enough power in this computer to do this. Give me just a moment, LV. Let me pull up my blue letter.
Sonetta, we need a share screen.
I'm going to share right now.
I don't see nobody sharing nothing yet.
I'm about to do it right now. Okay. Is this pretty visible, or do I need to blow that up?
It's visible.
All right. So since you mentioned it, let's take a look at something, Chantwy. Verse 13, he said to Abraham, "Know for surely thy seed shall be a stranger in the land, and not theirs." Gar in the Hebrew, and serve them, and shall Anav afflict them 400 years. This is God's attestation. Is that a lie? That's what it sounds like you're saying. You're saying, if I can't do the math, then this is wrong. No, a testimony is a person's word, right? Very next verse, verse 14. And also that nation, whom they shall serve. What nation? You're saying it's America. I'm going to say it's Egypt for an obvious reason. The King James Bible was first written in 1611. There was no America. America's a corporation, folks. It started off as 13 colonies. And there were already indigenous people over here. Facts. Facts. So there's no America at 1611. Then here comes the 1769 edition. William Tyndale already had a version out in the 1300s. This stuff was already written in English before America for at least 400, 500, 600 years. 1300, 1400, 1500, 1600, 17. You do the math. Now they say the transatlantic slave trade began around 1550 AD. That's what they say. That's what we have on record. What does that have to do with the following? Also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. I'm sorry, is America judged? I mean, is that the place where Israel was? Is that the seed that God was talking about? They had to be here in America. Well, let's see. Okay, let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling. And then he goes on to say, but you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. And here's the kill shots. But in the fourth generation, they shall come here again, for the iniquities of the Amorites is not yet full. Real quick, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 1. 4 generations, folks. Y'all got that? The children of the 1, 2, 3, 4th generation. This is Matthew chapter 1. Let's see if they tinted this at verse 17. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. Did you hear that? 14 generations. From Abraham to David? Question. When does David exist? And here's a better question. Is America there at the time David exists? But he said 14 generations. If you get to David, you still can't get America. I mean, you can't even get an Indian in America at that time. We don't have no history for that because we're talking about at least 1100 BCE minimum, 1000. I'm sorry. It's 4 generations that have to go back to the land. And we see that with Caleb. We see that. It's only 4 generations out of 14. So once you get past 4 generations, now you're 10 generations down the line ahead of time. Scholars date Abraham about 2000 BCE. I'm just going to say this because we don't have a whole lot of time to break all the information down. It's 2023 AD. That's 4,000 years.
Don, I can't hear you. Hello?
He's frozen on my end too.
I'm here. He probably froze up. It looked like he froze up.
Pause the time.
Yeah, pause this time. You froze up on the screen, brother.
Sonetta, let's while we're waiting, here we go. Man. Yeah, he's frozen. I'm gonna text him real quick.
Yeah. Come on, brother. He froze up on the screen. See him right there. He froze. All right. He's out. He'll be back in. He'll click the link back.
Okay. So that we're not sitting in boredom, let's
hit him up. Let him know he's out or something.
Yeah. All right. Share my screen. I'm gonna text him and get him back.
It's like this. Roper! It's Elvie Europa. Never forget me. Had to realize I was tripping from the jump. Life's hard. You could be the victim of the month. All at once, I made life trickle from my tongue. So I didn't speak death when I gave it to my young.
Don says he's
Sorry
back.
about that, folks. I timed
All
out.
right, brother. He's back. Share your screen back. Share your screen, brother.
Yes, sir. Let's get back.
They stop your clock.
Yep, we stopped it. Let me get it back up. You're at 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Whenever your screen pops up and you start going, we'll continue.
All right. Sorry about that. So again, there's 42 generations from Abraham to David. But God is saying to Abraham in Genesis 15, as we just saw, it has to be the children of the 4th generation. In Exodus 1, what we find is 70 souls leaving out of Canaan. They're already in Canaan, and they go into Egypt in Exodus. And here in Exodus 1, we start to see the affliction. I'll read it. But they afflicted them the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved, children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. What this proves is that this is the nation that God was speaking of, because we can find his seed in the land of Egypt. America. Maybe they made a mistake with the Masoretic text, but let's look at it. Here's your interlinear Masoretic text. It says, Misra Aved Ben Yisrael Aved Perek. Here's the word right here, rigor. What does it mean? because I know I don't have a lot of time. Harshness, severity, cruelty, to break apart from an unused root, to fracture. Usually when you see the movies, it's somebody getting whipped and beat and killed, and yeah, that's what that's about. All right. Yeah, proving that they were going through affliction right there in the Exodus. I'm sorry, folks, but you can't get around that. You can't change the text. And further, is that the only Bible that says that? I don't think it does. Well, let's see. Let's go with you. And let's go right to the same verse. Oh, now I done timed out of that. So let's go back to Exodus 1. It's the same children, the same seed God is speaking of. Verse 1, 2, 3, 4. They list all 12 tribes, correct? But these are not going through the affliction. But the text says they do. So before we start getting into this whole thing about how much time, because we don't have time to get into that, what we can discuss is what has been attested to by the scholars. They're saying, and every other translation is saying the same one thing. They're in the Egypt and they're going through the affliction. I have a whole nother take on this, but all the scholars agree to that. Let's see if I can, well, it looks like I'm getting a little slow down. Let me get out of that because I don't have time. I'm gonna share my PowerPoint if you don't mind. Let me get back to my pause my time for me. Let me get back to my PowerPoint. 10 minutes is really not enough to enough time to get into.
Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, I'm sharing it right now. Pro presenter. Can you see it?
Sonetta, can you bring the his screen up?
Or do I need to? Let me stop and reshare.
You gotta let me see it. You gotta pull up the screen.
All right. Okay. Yeah, there's really not enough time to do this. I just want to get back to my witnesses. This is what all the historians say. I want to get right back to it. We're not here to discuss the time, brother. That's a red herring. I'm sorry, but that's not how this works. Stick to the point. So just to get back to, and I'm sorry, y'all, give me just a minute because I'm got to get back to my place where I was on my PowerPoint. Manetho, ancient Greek writer. Manetho, he was an Egyptian priest. He wrote the history of Egypt in Greek in the 3rd century BC, roughly around the time of the Septuagint. His writings are mainly preserved by quotations in the writings of Josephus, Africanus, and Eusebius. And as noted earlier, Josephus quotes Manetho to show the antiquity of the Jews. This proves that Israel was in Egypt. You hadn't showed any scholar to tell us Israel was in America going through affliction and then came out and then went back into Israel, back into the land of Canaan in the 4th generation. Man, I don't know how you can do that. Manetho, he Hyksos with the Jews. The Hyksos were foreign rulers of the Lower Egypt from about 1663 BC to about 1555 BC, and they were expelled from Egypt by Amos, who founded the 18th dynasty. Manethos is the one that Josephus is getting his information from, by the way. Don't have a whole lot of time to get into that. Eusebius, he quotes Manetho, 1940-97. Manetho explains the meaning of the Hyksos by saying their race as a whole is called Hyksos. That is king shepherds, and that's exactly what Israel was. Bunch of shepherds, goat herders. And of course, they go into the language. I'm moving on for the sake of time. Again, more about the Hyksos. Tacitus, Cornelius Tacitus, born about 55 AD, he became a senator of Vespasian about 69 AD. And you know what he does? He says the same thing, that Israel was in the Egyptian captivity. He tells you that right here in the text when he starts talking about the gods of Egypt, and he goes into the Moses by name was warned. But again, that's just another witness, Tacitus. the Jews regarded him as a profane writer, but even the profane writer Tacitus acknowledges there was a plague in Egypt, more evidence, more stations, more facts, and there was plagues in Egypt. We know that when we read the Exodus. God sends 10 judgments or 10 plagues in Passover. He gives
2-minute warning. Oh, this you dropped out again. You stop.
He froze up again. He froze up again.
You said he still got 2 more minutes?
No, he's used 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Told them get money, we pay. Look, the traffic make the neighbors shook. Mix baby with the baby powder. Every hour check your books is business. Without critical thinking, you cook. Don't overlook your queen. Let go of every rug. It's okay to treat pieces like pieces, but the pieces we piece off. Never be treacherous, but at least it's better than being halfway decent. Come on, man, it's your roper. Grew up in the Amazon, jungle time. How you go line for line with a rap nigga who swing any line? It's impeccable yet incredible. Speak the truth but still uneligible. I scribble it out in a tone that turn you vegetable. It's okay, I know you fucking hate it, but I made it from the places where niggas is underrated. Kept the cases, all dead bodies, no faces. This demon's on my block, the cops still racist. But I embrace it, just the matrix with things so tasteless. But they still asking me where the steak is. These niggas vampires, I still get the steak in. Or perhaps I'm mistaken. Didn't grow up in the trap spot, but the spot is still vacant. Holes in the attic, so
All right, brother. You back?
I'm sorry, folks. It's timing out stuff. Okay, so I know I don't have a whole lot of time left. I've got a whole lot of different scholars I can go to, Africanus, Eusebius. But I want to go ahead and just get right to the point. As I stated earlier when I started, when we're talking biblical chronology, ecclesiastical history, especially within, and I need to go ahead and present my screen again while I'm talking. Nobody argues for this Egyptian captivity of Genesis 15 being America. That's ridiculous. There is no Jewish scholar that says it. There's no secular scholars that state this. There's no historians that state this. There is nobody arguing this stuff that we are arguing today. Is ridiculous. It's absurd and it's totally ahistorical. Facts. Eusebius. Who is Eusebius? Eusebius, like all these other people I just mentioned, these people outlived us. They know what they're talking about. They've been studying longer than us, and they have dug so much into chronology, biblical chronology, till most of us never even heard half the stuff that I've already stated tonight. They are basing this on information and data that's in the Bible. They're using Egypt. They're not running from Egypt. They're using these scholars like the father of history. That's what they call it. They talk about the divisions of canons. They talk about all these dynasties in Egypt, and here we come along talking about America arbitrarily. There's nothing in the Bible about America. I'm sorry. A-M-E-R. None of this is in the Bible. Sorry.
Time.
It's not. You have no evidence. So let's work on something, and I think that's my time. But let's work on something that's more valid, something that has actual evidence. We can make full truth to our attestations. I'm off the mic.
Brother Aaron Yahudim, your 3-minute rebuttal starts when you're ready.
Yeah, hey fam, everything's gonna be a rebuttal. So even when I get into my presentation, it's still gonna all be rebuttaling anyway. So I wrote down some things that homie just said. First he just said that there's no evidence, man. That's why we're about to go into this round. Don, we about to provide evidence. Our nation, so-called black people, here's some evidence. We all been waiting for faith too long. We've been preaching faith, faith, faith. The good thing about it is the creator's word don't come back void. We about to get into some evidence without a doubt. The brother showed no evidence of 400 years in ancient Egypt. Still haven't. Not one source placed Egypt, 400 years slavery in the same sentence. Not one. You know, check me out. He said that America is not mentioned. He said that it's arbitrarily being thrown about. But brother, aren't you I don't know if you're a Christian, but you believe in the New Testament. You believe in a lot of Hellenistic history in which they're referring to nations as animals and beasts and mysteriously referring to mystery Babylon. And ain't they doing daggone body parts referring to nations? And you got some nerve to say that this prophecy is arbitrarily? Nah, bro. The Hellenistic literature that a lot of our people love is throwing a lot of mysticism around. So you can't come for this one. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. You keep saying that the word rigor, you brought up the word rigor. And my whole thing is the thesis is 400 years. Show the rigor for 400 years. You haven't, bruh. You brought up the Exodus 1 portion where a Pharaoh rose up that knew not Joseph. That's after Joseph. That's around the time of Moses. You have 80 years, brother. We need more. So pause my time, please, and start my screen. Let me know when it started, and I'm going to keep going. But if I could still keep my rebuttal time, appreciate that. And let me know if you're sharing, please.
Nope, not yet. And I paused you at 1 minute, 26 seconds. Share Aaron Yahudine's screen. Sa, can you hear me?
Screen is sharing.
Okay. Can y'all hear me still?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right, man. It's the last round, and here go that proof. And I hope I still have all my time. And let me know when it starts back, fam. LV, we good?
Yeah, we can see your screen. Then I started you.
All right. So part 2, America in the 400 years. We about to prove. So like I said, the prophecy shows that enslavement, affliction, and humbling 400 years. So let's prove that, because we disproved it happened in Egypt irrefutably, like I keep saying. So we showed what the affliction portion means in the Jacenius lexicon. But check me out. 400 years of enslavement, affliction, and humbling. I just threw together some things. It just kind of encompasses the beginning of 1619 transatlantic slavery, some of the cases, some of the labor acts, some of the things that's happened to our people. And I just had to stop at 1992. I know that for 1 year of crazy American history, you could do a 15-hour presentation for just 1 year. So us as a people know that. Yeah. All right. So the blessings and curses of Israel is listed in a plethora of places, and it pretty much just shows you, like Leviticus 26:15 shows, it says, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgment, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that break my covenant, then he will set his face against us and he will punish you. So like I said, there's punishments and consequences for everybody. And for us to think that, you know, that we're exempt from that as a nation that doesn't have lineage, a homeland, a language, collectively we're looking for origins, and we don't think that this is applicable to us, is ridiculous, especially whenever we see the judgment beginning on these nations. So a broken covenant means punishment. That's what occurred to us. And I just put a small passage in here, Ezekiel 39. It shows, because they rebelled against me and I turned away my face from them. That's what the 400 years has been, people. It's been our creator's face being turned away from us. Tell me what other explanation there's been for the lynchings, the murders, the riots, for our eyes being violent towards one another. Tell me explain to us what the and us what indigenous recordings contain the explanation for the 400 years of punishment that we've been. This is the explanation, and we're proving it without a doubt. So he will deliver us in the hands of the enemies, our LV, and we will fall by the sword because of our uncleanliness and according to our transgressions. Everything about where we're at is we refuse to accept that. We refuse to accept that the 400 years of mistreatment to our great-great-granny on down to our grandma, to our fathers, is because of this, because of the transgressions that our ancestors did, and that a face was turned from us so that the oppressors have free will. If that's not the explanation, I'm all ears. I really am, especially according to an indigenous recording. What visions did they have that appeals to us today like this does? None. This is very particular to us. So check me out. I don't have time for all this, man. I got to get through it. When does 400 years end? Pope Gregory in the Julian calendar says, according to the Gregorian calendar and the Julian, Janus dictates the beginning of the year. January 1st, 2020, August 1619. We weren't going by them dates. That's all I got to say. So for people saying 2019 should have solidified it, we don't. Back when Abram received this promise, they didn't know what a December was. Feel me? So the creator says, and the majority of the indigenous people say that the luminaries dictate seasons. Most pre-Hellenized civilizations followed the seasonal calendrical cycle. The Gregorian calendar, as a matter of fact, is a typology. September 7, Oct 8, November 9, December 10, naturally making January month 11 and February 12. Even in their calendar, they tell you March, spring of Eve, Nissan, whatever people like to call it. Even the indigenous people understood that the springtime, whenever everything came new, with life is a new year. So March, spring ended the 400-year punishment. So a true 400 years, spring of 1620, spring of 2020. Why? We arrived 1619. You don't start a year with that. You start the year whenever it's in its totality, when it ends. That first year came to fruition, spring 1620. That means 400 years from then would equate, using the true calendrical cycle, spring 2020. So that gives us what? March, April? Now check me out. This is the proof. Let's go through all the news outlets. It literally says the day everything changed because of pandemic, a contrived pandemic, if you ask me. That's just my opinion. A contrived pandemic was thrown on these nations, throwing them into a plight of judgment. So tell me how this is a coincidence, people. 400 years, the 400 years ends in spring of March 2020, and all of a sudden we see headlines like March 11th, the day everything changed. Let's look at the Friday cover. Coronavirus will change the world permanently. Here's how. Let's keep going. When did you realize the COVID pandemic changed everything? That says March 3rd, 2021. So, and it's speaking about the pandemic that started in March 2020. How is this a coincidence? I urge anybody, go find me news articles from any day of the year back 400 years and show that it says the day the world changed. How is this a coincidence? According to the 400 years, the day everything changed, a timeline of March 11, 2020, spring, Abib, a new year, the end of punishment. This is proof. Even ESPN, visual timeline of the day that changed everything, March 11th, an oral history of the day everything changed. We have proof. This is not a coincidence, and not my words either. Did the 400-year affliction occur in ancient Egypt? We know that it didn't, and we know modern day America checks all boxes. I'm sorry. Please just screenshot this or pause it. Read it. I have to keep going, man. We got some powerful information. LV, please don't forget my 2-minute warning, brother. So none of the prophecies occurred in ancient Egypt, and everything occurred in America. Please just read through it. So Deuteronomy 37, because we know in the 400-year prophecy, it says, after the 400 years, mind you, everyone said, y'all should have came out and left. That's not what the prophecy says. It says after 400 years, it says, I will judge that nation. And then it says, afterwards, you will come out with great substance. That means a judgment phase in which we're witnessing, just like Egypt. And let's look more into judgment. Deuteronomy 37 shows that y'all will put these curses upon thine enemies and upon those that hate thee, who have persecuted thee. And prior to Deuteronomy 30, you have Deuteronomy 29, you have Deuteronomy 28, you have the blessings and curses. So we understand that these curses will transfer onto the enemy for what they've done to you. And when would it start? Maybe after our 400-year punishment, when we're to learn and to accept of our punishment and come to the understanding of who we are and turn away from the ways of the transgressors and the oppressors. So mind you, let's show that this is tangible. These curses being put on our enemy. A quick recap post 400-year mark. Spring 2020, and the 400-year punishment judgment begins. Life, society, normalities, formalities, economies, regulations, etc. turned upside down. 77% of population coerced or forced into receiving something that a lot of people didn't want to get. 65% received a full dosage. An unprecedented and historic weather anomalies, wild floods, from list on down. Inflation and supply shortages. Most realistic threat of World War III with Iran, with Ukraine in that situation, and Russia, which ended up forming the BRICS or embezzling BRICS as it is. The Great Reset, if you don't know about that, look into the World Economic Forum, and you have BRICS alliance being formed. That's crazy. And if you look at the demographics of people who did receive something and who didn't, I think that speaks volumes. For that to happen on a coincidence, all this is a coincidence. We have to have 100% coincidentalists out here. You're no longer an Egyptologist. You're no longer a Black Hebrew Israelite. You're no longer a scholar. You're a coincidentalist. If you keep saying, oh, coincidence, that's crazy. But coincidence, down to them timelines, y'all. So the things that people were forced to take or were coerced to take, you know, it was only a year of research. I mean, the only one closest to that was the mumps a dosage, which took 4 years. So to say this is questionable is not an understatement. Deuteronomy 28:22, y'all shall smite thee with distress and fever and cold and inflammation and blight and paleness, and they shall pursue you until they have destroyed thee. Curses transferring on our enemies, and it is like proclaim. Deuteronomy 16:61, and y'all shall bring upon thee every sickness and every plague that is not written, and every one that is written in the book of this law, until he shall have destroyed thee. To say that it's coincidental that a bunch of these people took something that could have ill effects, and we have loved ones that did as well. So that's why I'm not trying to get too personal. This is my opinion, but it's crazy the way that it was thrown out there and contrived. So in 2020 alone, Colorado had its second largest fire on record. More than 1 million acres torched in Oregon. These combined fires displaced hundreds of thousands of people, burnt a bunch of these people's houses, you know, and is vexing them. Let's see. Data released by the National Interagency Fire Center on December 31st, 2020 shows that 2020 was the worst year for U.S. fires. In total, nearly 10 million acres of land burned, and those wildfires contributed to severe deterioration in the air quality across many cities. And we don't even have to talk about the Australian waterfall. Dang, really? All right. So let's just keep going. So the worst drought that experienced in 1,200 years, Deuteronomy 28 says that it's going to make the rain of thy land dust. Check this out. So this graph shows that 500% increase in people that took a mental health screening. So everything at the bottom is 2014, I think, up to 19. This line right here is 2020. Oh my goodness. Please pause my time, family. I'm sorry, man.
I paused it.
I appreciate it, bro. I think I had a link up in there that took me to the mental health agency that I pulled that data from.
We'll wait till you get back to your slide.
And if I could get a 30-second warning at this point, bro, too, please, I'd appreciate it.
I got you.
Yes, sir. Can you still see?
It's loading right now.
All right. Can I be heard, LV?
I can hear you clearly.
And you can see?
And I can see.
Yes, sir. All right. So in 2021, over 5.4 million people ended up taking a mental health screening. That jumped 500%. This orange line represents 2020. This blue line represents 2021. People vexed, man. All this is taking them over. Deuteronomy 28. The Lord shall smite thee with insanity and blindness and astonishment of mind. And the highest percentage of what they were screening for was depression and anxiety and bipolarism. God dang. I don't want to be part of them numbers, but because this shouldn't have an effect on us. Oh man, I accidentally, damn. Well, this was showing the turmoil with their politics. Is showing that they're gonna have disregard for each other. They're storming each other's capitals all of a sudden in 2020. They're beefing about everything. There's de-dollarization and BRICS. I don't have time to get into it, but there's a coalition forming of all these nations, and if you add up their population, they're dropping the US dollar. They're dropping the US dollar, and it's going to kill the reserve status that America has and cripple the economy, kill the debt ceiling and everything else. These are the nations allied against America and Europe and Japan and Israel as we speak. Something still ain't got to be said post 2020, baby. And there go my niggas smiling. They over here like they got something planned. Hey, man, that's out of my hands. The ones eclipsing the US dollar in international trading. That just occurred 2022. Come on now. All right. So I just want to let y'all know all this. So many things have happened. All right. But we also have the HR 1242 and the HR 40, which commemorates reparations. And I'm going to go to HR 1242 real quick to just show that Congress passed the 400 Years of American History Act in correlation with this prophecy, which explains that enslavement, humbling, and affliction for 400 years have been done in this nation, and that they're going to get committees going to rectify these things. But don't worry about it. Our Creator will anyway. So I guess that's my time. I ain't got time to finish. Thank you.
Time. Don, you got a final 3-minute rebuttal? Then we go into the question and answer round.
All right. Let me present my slide once again. You know, it's amazing. And I am sharing my screen, I think. Do you see it pulled up?
It's not pulled up yet, but it's loading. All right, you're live. Go ahead.
All right. So this is what we call an emotional appeal. Appeal to the popular view, where there's a competing thought that the Gen15 prophecy is about America, but then you've got to overlook and stumble over everything in the Bible to assertion. Like the children of the fourth generation will return here. We're 82 generations removed. It's 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus, or from Abraham to the first century. That's almost 2,000 years. Question: when is the fourth generation ever going to appear in land of Canaan? See, deductive reason says that it has to be Joshua, Caleb, and all those children who entered into the land of Canaan from the start with. That's the fourth generation. And Moses has a son named Gershom. He's also fourth generation. Now, I want to share this in my rebuttal round because there is a lot of issues, but just quickly, this is what I have come up with, just on studying, right? Because we don't care about the numbers. The Bible says what it says, skip your man. But this, I just find coincidental that if you add up the line of Levi, he has a son named Kohath. Kohath has a son named Amram. Amram has a son, Moses. If you add up 133, 137, and 120, you get 390 years. If you add the 40 years in the wilderness, you get 430. Is that a coincidence? No, ma'am. No, sir. That is not a coincidence. What they'll tell you is the issues between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text kind of differ a little bit in that they have a couple of explanations. One is, to the genealogies, there are omissions. There are omissions of names. You can see that in this line here. Omissions of names. That's number one thing. That's one of them. And then the text kind of varies from point to point. The scholars have tried to work this out, but the biggest explanation that I have found is right here in this passage, in this citation, where according to a number of ancient Jewish writers, the church fathers that have already been discussing this issue, that the 430 years started with the promise of an heir to Abraham, while the 400 years started with the birth of Isaac and 30 years later. Some writers, like Bullinger, calls this verse an example of an epitrechon, which is a parenthetic addition by the way the statement is thrown in, not complete in itself. What this means is when you look at the, okay, let me get just maybe 5 more seconds just to land this point, if you don't mind.
Yep.
The point is, between the two texts, they argue about the interpretation of the text. So that's why all these discrepancies about how long and when it starts. We don't care. Everybody agrees that it was in Egypt. That point.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, man, powerful, man. These brothers are not disappointing. They're strong on their point, and they clearly want all the smoke. And we're getting to the point of the segment to where it's the question and answers, rapid fire, 30 seconds to answer, must answer yes or no's directly, then use the remaining time to expound upon the question. Don went first, so Aaron Yahudim will do his interrogation first. Are you ready, brother?
I'm ready.
Time starts when you're ready.
Appreciate it. Hey, Don, shalom, family. Respectfully, I didn't hear one historical source which showed us that the ancient Egyptians enslaved people, especially Hebrews, for 400 years. Can you provide us a source now to prove that?
I provided several sources. It's in the Antiquities of the Jews in Book 2, Chapter 9.
Well, the Antiquities of the Jews said that 215 years were in Egypt and 215 in Canaan. Can you show us in the Antiquity of the Jews where it says 400 years of enslavement? That's all I wanted to see, because I didn't see that, brother. I saw sojourning.
I actually started out that with the title itself. If you recall, when that was the first I called on Josephus first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because in our cross exam or in our prelim, you asked me that same question and I gave you Josephus.
Okay. Well, I think that we have a
Historically.
misunderstanding, brother, because I brought out the fact that he split those up, and I'm just saying I didn't see the enslavement. So my follow-up question, do you have any historical source from the indigenous Kemetic writings and recordings themselves that they affirm that they did such things to a nation for 400 years? Do you have an indigenous Kemetic source that proves that they enslaved people 400 years?
No, I have Manito. And that's
Which
why
is,
I presented that to you if you had been listening.
is that an indigenous Egyptian family?
No, he's
Okay.
not.
So it's a no then, and I'm just gonna say that respectfully. Do you agree or disagree with the fact that we have irrefutable history of 400 years of enslavement, humbling, and affliction in this nation we're currently at? Is that a yes or no?
I'm sorry, rephrase.
Do we have irrefutable history that we have been enslaved, afflicted, and humbled in this nation for 400 years? Would you agree to that or no?
I would not agree to that. No, I wouldn't.
Can you expound, brother, on why you don't agree?
It's real simple. We have black slave owners here in America. In fact, pretty notable. Can't give you the name right off the bat. But we have had black slave owners in this country.
Okay. Well, I appreciate
There
that
are
answer.
black Jews in this country, if I could finish.
Okay.
There were Jews in this country also that had slaves in more of the southern states. If this is the case, what this says is not all the time black folks have been in this country, including the indigenous ones that were here before, were not all afflicted.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, brother. But you did say that there were indigenous black people, so I think that we're getting those misconstrued versus those that were brought in the transatlantic slave trade. So the brother disagrees that there's 400 years of enslavement, affliction, and humbling in this nation. That is pretty wild. In the rendering that I brought up, brother, it says that they will come hither with much property. Do you have a verse that proves that the ancient Israelites came from Egypt and entered into Jerusalem with this great substance? Can you show me book, chapter, verse where I can read that at?
Sure. First of all, they go in the Exodus 170 souls. They come out 600,000 strong. I pulled that up in the second round of my debate. 600,000 men of age, and I can't pull the verse for that, although it may kind of want to time me out.
I think we're getting off track, brother. If I could just rephrase my question.
Yes, please rephrase your
Genesis 15:14 in the Septuagint, the original rendering said that they would come forth hither with the property. So regardless of what property that you think that they have, can you show us fulfillment in the text that shows them entering into Jerusalem with whatever property you believe that is pertaining to? Can I read that right now for myself, please?
The text says they shall come out with great substance.
But no, brother, I want proof that they came into Jerusalem with this subject. I know what the prophecy says. I'm asking you to prove the fulfillment in antiquity. Where can we read this at?
Well, we can read it in a number of places, starting with Joshua, correct?
What did they bring in, brother?
Okay, give me, how much time you said I got? 30 seconds?
30 seconds, you got 20 seconds now.
Okay. So Joshua takes the fourth generation into the land, and they come in over 600,000, over 1 million people is what they do when they come in, and they have sacrifices right there in the land. He sends people out in Numbers 14, Numbers 14:30. You can go there. You can go a number of places if you like.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, family. I believe that's a private interpretation. You didn't prove any form of great substance. It said property, and property in that form would have been cattle, sheep, possessions, property. We don't read them coming into the land with it. So I don't believe that you fulfilled that question. Well, no, I'm going to skip that question. I think I have a little better one. We know that Joseph sent for his people. He was the king at the time. We know that they lived in Goshen in Upper Egypt. We know that they ate at the king's table. We know that the Israelites lived in abundance and like royalty for a good majority of their stay. So, brother, if you are affirming that this prophecy is dealing with Egypt, where in the prophecy did it leave room for living peacefully, being well respected, and eating from the king's table? Because what we read, brother, for this whole debate, enslavement, humbling, affliction, where do you leave room to add in to this great treatment that the Israelites faced whenever they joined their brother, the king of Egypt at the time? Why is that not part of this 400-year enslavement prophecy?
I'm sorry, that's a straw man argument. There's no king of Israel in Egypt. Sorry. God was their king. That's what the Bible says. And
do you
furthermore,
agree?
Furthermore, they're not under the rule of kings until they get into the land, and King Saul becomes the monarch. So your question is, it's a straw man.
I know that
You
it
wanna
can't be
rephrase
answered
it?
because we know that Genesis 15 said nothing about you'll be treated well, you'll be living lavishly, and that didn't occur to us when we got here. It was straight affliction and punishment, family. So two things don't equate. My next question is, since we know Amram, Kohath, and Moses were the 3 generations in Egypt, how do you explain how that spans out to 430 years, brother?
It's simple. When Levi in the 50th chapter, Joseph in the 50th chapter, the text tells you he saw the children of Ephraim and Manasseh to the 3rd and to the 4th generation, thereby excluding all the 70 souls being in the affliction. It excludes Jacob being in the affliction, and it excludes Isaac from being in the affliction, although they are seeds of Abraham. This is particularly talking about after Joseph dies and the son, grandson, and great-grandson are in the Exodus going through the affliction. It begins in chapter 2 and it ends in chapter 12. And God says, I've seen your affliction.
So what you just said, brother, and what you had just admitted to is that a plethora of people, the 70 souls, Isaac, that they were immune to this affliction. They didn't go through this affliction. You cut yourself because the 400 years says everyone, your whole seed will go through it. You just cut yourself, brother, again. So another question that I would like to ask you, when did said affliction begin? What's your starting point? Because I didn't hear you say it. When did the Israelites begin?
Not go through affliction. Joseph is ruling at the time, and he is next to, we will say, the vice president. The only person that was above him was Pharaoh, and they are not in the affliction.
So when did it start, brother?
The affliction doesn't start to the death of Pharaoh, to the death of Joseph, and the new Pharaoh arose that knew not Joseph. Exodus 2. That's where it began.
So this prophecy is all contingent around enslavement and affliction. So if that's your starting point, brother, how do you span out 400 years of enslavement, starting with the Pharaoh that rose up that knew not Joseph? How do you make sense of that?
First of all, I don't span it out. Number one, that's ridiculous to even say that way. And number two, you're still asking me, how did I figure out the time? We don't figure out the time unless we go by, dates like Adam, going back to Noah, the flood, the deluge, as I pointed out over and over again in my first and second and third round.
Okay, brother.
These people are trying to figure out how to get to the time, but the issue is you don't have the names and the genealogies in place between Exodus 2 and Exodus 12 to even really determine it. So you have to go by all the factors.
Okay. Hey, brother, at the time of getting this prophecy, do you agree that Abram had knowledge and he knew Egypt? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, why didn't the creator say, know for a surety that your seed will be enslaved in Egypt for 400 years? Why would he mysteriously name it when the all-knowing creator had knowledge that Abram just came from there and Abram knew he knew Egypt? Why didn't he just list Egypt like he did in the later verses whenever he laid out the land allotments, brother? Please make sense of that.
Well, let me call God up right quick and let me ask him. Hello?
No, I'm not asking for ad homs, brother. I'm asking you for real to please try to logically explain.
You're asking me for something that is implausible.
You're playing with my intelligence now, brother. I'm asking you for a plausible. Okay, that's you.
Thank you. You're asking me to ask God, I guess, why he didn't just say Egypt. He didn't want to say Egypt. The text says what it says. Cool. Boom, bam, just like that. They're going to be in the land, not there. That's what you call prophecy.
I appreciate that, brother. So do you have any hermeneutics to prove that? So are you just telling us that coincidentally, the only place Egypt is mentioned as a land not your own is in Genesis 15? I don't agree with that. So can you please persuade me that you're correct? Can you give me any other place in all of Torah or Tanakh where Egypt is mysteriously referred to as a land not their own? Or is that explicitly just for Genesis 15 for your leisure?
This is the final question.
Sorry, let's go back to the text. It tells you in Genesis 15, also in the nation whom they shall serve, I shall judge, and afterwards they shall come out with great substance. And you shall go and be buried with your fathers in peace, but in the 4th generation, Arba, they shall come here again. Where's here? When you go to the 12th chapter of Genesis, it proves and shows you that Abraham is in the land of Canaan. That is their inheritance, not Egypt. Sorry.
I don't think that fulfills the question, but okay. Okay.
Appreciate you, brothers. We're going to go ahead and switch that over. We appreciate Side TV. Make sure you subscribe to there as well. The UDL Ultimate Debate League We appreciate Sarnetta for having us over here. Also, the Clubhouse streets, go over there for any of the good Clubhouse entertainment that you guys are missing out on. We have Don Bird on the last leg of the question and answer round, and it's going to begin when you start asking your questions. Aaron Yahuddin, 30 seconds to answer. Understood?
Okay, brother. I need you to turn to Deuteronomy 26 for me, and when you get there, Deuteronomy 26. And I want you to follow me there. What happened to the brother? He dropped off. I think the brother dropped off.
Yeah, it looked like he dropped off.
All right. Well, I'll pause my question until he returns.
All right, here you go. He's back. He's back,
brother.
We're gonna start that from. We'll start that from the top.
It's all good. It happens. Okay, brother. Could you turn over to Devarim 26?
Deuteronomy 26. Yep, I'm there.
All right. And we're gonna pick this up. I'm just gonna read two. And you just be prepared for the response, okay?
I got you. What verse, family?
I'm gonna pick this up at the Pilcrow, verse 4.
Right.
And the priest shall take the basket out of your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord. And you shall speak and say before the Lord your God, here's another attestation. A Syrian ready to perish was my father. And he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation in Egypt, great, mighty, and populous, and the evil entreated us and afflicted us and laid upon us hard bondage. Verse 7. And when we cried to the Lord God our fathers, heard our voice and looked upon our afflictions and our labor and our oppressions. And the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with great terribleness and with signs and with wonders. Here's the question. What does evil entreated mean?
I mean, it just depends the context, man, because if you have like an indentured servitude or an indentured servant, there's laws for how you treat him and mistreat him. Versus a slave, it's different. Versus like your enemy, it's different. So it just depends on the context, brother. So in this context, I would believe we deal with the exegesis of the scripture, that they inflicted harder labor on them because they were afraid that they were going to rise up. So they started to afflict them with harder labor, brother. So,
okay. Based on the meaning of what you understand evil entreated, question, who is the one making the statement in this verse?
In which verse?
When I started at verse 4. I'll read it again for you.
No.
And the priest.
No, I'm all right. Oh, it's all good. You can read it again.
And the priest shall take the basket out of your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord thy God. You shall speak and say, the Lord thy God, a Syrian, you shall speak before the Lord. You are a Syrian ready to perish was my father. And he went down into Egypt, journeyed there with a few, and became a nation, great, mighty, and populous. Who was the speaker of this verse?
It's either the seed or Moses, correct?
You think
the
it's
seed that endured the affliction of the time, you know?
The seed that endured the affliction of the time. Okay. And so would you say that Genesis 15 is pointing to this?
If it said 400 years, brother, then I would. But since it doesn't, you know, because we could read about this happening in Babylon and Assyria captivity, bro. The same exact thing happened in a lot of captivities. I would be adding my opinion, which I've been commanded not to do, to say, yes, this is. Unless I saw that this occurred for 400 years, then I might as well throw it in the wind and say that this was Assyria, Babylon, and all the other places. It has nothing to do with the Genesis 15 prophecy, brother, because like aforementioned, 400 years, like the title says, we don't read that here. So not at all.
Okay, let's go over to the book of Exodus 12 and 40. Now, you just admitted that the text stands. That's what you just said. You just said that evil it's got to be talking about Israel. That's what you just stated. You stated that for the whole audience.
Yes.
This is Exodus 12. And here's the question coming up. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. Question. Where do you start your count?
Whenever Abram showed Isaac the land of Canaan, that began the sojourning. When do I start the affliction of ancient Egyptians? After Joseph passed and when the Pharaoh rose up around the time of Moses' birth. And that encompasses the fact that this irrefutably couldn't possibly span out 400 years, brother. So according to Exodus 12:40, which has nothing to do with the 400-year prophecy, where I would start the sojourn in Canaan is whenever Abram's seed, which was Isaac, was shown the land of Canaan. That would begin it because he entered into the land of Canaan. That's Abram's seed.
I'm sorry, was that his response time up?
That's my response. It's whenever, yeah. Did you hear my response, brother?
Yeah, I heard your response. I was just wondering if he was saying that was your time or not. All right, now that was verse 40. And you said you started your time with Abraham showing Isaac the land.
Whenever he brought his son to the land, his seed to the land, yes.
So then why are you arguing for America?
Whoa, you're trying to really twist and manipulate me right now. I'm not arguing this for America. Exodus 12:40 has nothing to do with America. It clearly has something to do with Egypt and Canaan, bro. That's been my main point. And this is no shots at you, and this is still in my answer. I've yet to see you go to Genesis 15. I've yet to see you read from Genesis 15. I've yet to see you ask a question from Genesis 15. That's what this is all about, brother. Yeah. And we keep cherry picking other places.
Okay. Verse 41. New question. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day it came to pass that all the host of the Lord went out from Egypt. What makes you think that this right here is false? Just out of curiosity. What makes verse 12, what makes verse 40 correct and verse 41 incorrect?
I never ever said that was incorrect, brother. So I never.
It says I agree Egypt. With the scriptures. You're arguing against Egypt. You're saying that this text is wrong.
No. I'm saying that the Masoretic text that you're using, which contains additions and subtractions, like we was commanded not to do, clearly is polluted. And we can go to the scripture that teaches us not to do it. So clearly, it should have said Egypt and Canaan. I agree that the 430 years of sojourn was Egypt and Canaan, brother. That's what I spent damn near a whole slide on. So. Or a whole round on.
This verse is not saying Canaan, right? Are you aware of that?
In the original text that was inspired by the Hebrew scriptures, it does, and that's our main point of disconnect. You prefer to use
pull that verse.
You prefer. I definitely. I pulled the timeline. I pulled the verse.
You didn't give us the text.
I read it real quick.
You didn't give us no manuscript.
I got you. I'm right here.
No fragments, no nothing.
I'm right here. So this is Exodus 12:40. The great grandfather of the Septuagint, which birthed the Masoretic text, literally would have no MT without it, brother. So this is the Exodus 12:40. It says, and the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years. And it came to pass after the 430 years, all the forces of the Lord came forth out of the land of Egypt by night. I agree with that. And that happened in Egypt and Canaan like it was originally supposed to have been said.
And you got that from the Septuagint?
I got that. I'm using the English version of the Britain Septuagint because I don't read Greek nor Hebrew. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, are you aware that in the Septuagint, it does use agapatos and kanan in that same chapter in the Septuagint rendering? Are you aware of that? And also the Samaritan Pentateuch. Are you aware of that?
Are you aware that's my position? That's been my position.
Yeah, the issue is Genesis 15. Let's go back there.
Exactly, because bingo, we have an issue, and that's your issue.
Yeah.
You've been fighting an uphill battle to support a Masoretic redaction all night, but I've been going straight to Genesis 15. Straight to Genesis 15.
No, I'm not battling that. I'm battling for the fact that the text is still correct, even if you want to add, even with the addition of Canaan.
Which one, brother? The Masoretic or the Septuagint?
Either one you want. Which one? Genesis 15.
Oh, well, then I want the Septuagint.
Have you looked at that in your Greek text? The Greek text does not contain Canaan. It does not contain Egypt in the Greek text of the Septuagint.
Yes, it does.
In Genesis 15, it doesn't.
It does.
Sorry, it does not.
Yes, it does not validate. It says both. May I please show you
because
both?
You're on my time right now.
I'll show you both real quick.
You're on my time right now, brother. You're on my time.
This is your time. All right, brother.
Yes, you're on
my
time.
I was just going to respond to you.
Here's the issue. Verse 13 is your issue. It says, your seed shall be a stranger, gar, in a land not theirs. It can't be in a land that belongs to them and Egypt. See, that would be perverting the attestation of God. That's how you add. That's why you don't add, because that's twisting his words. He didn't say they would be in their own land being afflicted. He said they will be in a strange land, not theirs. It don't belong to them. They have no inherited right, no legal right. They have no dominion, no power, no influence to change anything or run anything. Not theirs for 400 years. And at least we can say,
Final
I'm sure you
question.
would agree, that it's not America. Not for 400 years.
I didn't find a question in that. Can you just rephrase your question so I could answer?
The whole point is, in the text, it reads, it does not read in their own land. It reads, do you acknowledge that Genesis 13 is God attestation? He's saying with his own mouth, he's saying they shall be in a strange land, not theirs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And America is not our land. And as a matter of fact, like I brought
That's
out,
time.
Last question then, bro.
I didn't get to respond.
It's
Your
time.
time. That's
I
time.
didn't get to respond. But
That's time.
Appreciate you, brothers, man. I know we want to get in everything, but we can't. Maybe you guys will stick around and entertain the audience or something.
Yeah, I'm here for audience questions.
Yeah. Bro, I appreciate you.
We'll do that next.
I appreciate you, Don.
Man, clearly these two brothers came swinging. They were serious, and I appreciate everything that they did, man. They both were very thorough. They brought that energy, little connection issues, but things that we can clear up on the back end and make sure that we're more prepared next time. First and foremost, we always want to thank Sonetta for just opening up the platform to the UDL for us to even host this right now. This will be the point to where I bring in the judge. We have a UDL judge, American Illuminati. He will give his rendering. Both parties have the ability to protest that man's decision. And we're going to also take a vote from the people because they want to know how you guys feel at home. So Sonetta said he'll open up the voting polls to see what that looks like for the people. And I think that's fair as well. We want to give you guys the opportunity to see that. But if you guys file a protest, it will be with the UDL judge and not the crowd that's here on Sonetta. American Illuminati, are you here with us today?
Yeah, I'm here. Can I be heard?
Yes. It's your time.
Awesome. Perfect. First off, I just want to say once again, Sonetta, thank you for having me on the platform. To explain, before I give my judgment, to explain the reasoning behind my judgment, I'm going to start with Don. Don, I'm going to say that you gave multiple sources agreeing that the prophecies were referring to Egypt. I'm going to give you a point for that. I'm also going to give you a point for bringing up addressing the idea that Israel was to exit this slavery, this captivity, this harsh treatment in the fourth generation. What I will doubt from you, though, however, is that you failed to establish on your own merit date, an exact date for when this punishment or this trial would begin and end for these people. You noted that it could have began with Isaac and then extended there, and then you also noted that it could have started with the Kohath all the way to Moses, extending it to its furthest, and then they're staying in the wilderness of Sinai, but you did not establish a firm date. I'm going to dock you for that. Aaron, you did give a clear timeline, 400 years from the spring of 1619 up until spring of 2020 or 1620, up until spring of 2020. You noted that the pandemic, the economic crashes, the weather anomalies, fires in America, and things of that nature would have been the punishments that are coming upon America with the dollar collapsing and things of that nature. You noted BRICS and those things. I'm going to give you a point for that. I'm going to say that you also won the debate round. I'm going to give you a point for that as well. I am going to dock you, though. You spent most of your time negating the sources that Don was bringing out, and you didn't really provide any clear sources of your own. Based upon everything that happened during the debate, unfortunately, I'm going to have to side with Aaron personally for establishing a clear timeline. Not to say that he is correct or that Don is wrong. Just the simple fact that he established a clear timeline, and Don, you did not. You relied on sources, and unfortunately, that's an appeal to authority. But your sources were more substantial. Had you established a date of your own, I would have said that you would have won, Don. But because you did not establish a date of your own, a clear timeline, I'm going to have to give it to Aaron. And Aaron, I almost docked you for not providing proper sources, but you did establish a clear timeline, so that was the meat of the debate.
There you have it. The brother American Illuminati has made himself clear. He says Aaron Yahudim is the winner of this engagement. Sarnetta, are we here?
Yes, sir. I'm here, brother. I'm here.
Go ahead and make me full screen real quick.
Say what?
Make me full screen, please. Oh, no, I'm blurry. All right. We'll turn the camera off then. Man, there you guys have it. Sarnetta, can you open up the poll chats and put Don Byrne and Aaron Yahudim in there, and let's get a vote from your audience. Let's see how the audience feel about these two brothers going back and forth.
I do that. I do that at the end. Like I put up a poll.
Okay.
How do you do it now? Like, can I put up a poll now? I remember somebody's trying to show me.
You want to go to your YouTube video, like your actual live. Go to the comment sections and click the click button, and then you'll be able to pose a question to your audience, and they can answer.
Oh, say that again.
So go open up another tab.
Yeah, I got it open.
Go to your YouTube video that's playing right now.
Yes, I am on it. I'm on that.
Okay, go to the comment section to the right. You see a plus symbol down there?
Comment symbol to the right.
Yeah, where the comments is on your right hand
Yeah, I
screen.
see the plus.
Click the plus.
Got it. Got it.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Put a poll, man. Ask the crowd. Let's get some crowd participation here. Once again, I'll make clear that the UDL judge is the one that could be protested, not the audience vote. But we want to hear from Sarnetta's extremely active audience. They entertained us, and we want to entertain their opinion as well. I think it's only right. How about you, Sai?
Yes, I agree with you, man, on this one.
Okay. Shoot, but what we can do is you'll get that poll up and running. Let's see what we can do.
I just put, who do you think won this debate? And then it says yes or no. So what should I put? It's better because
put Don put Pro Rizzo or Yahudim instead of yes or no.
Yeah, let me go back over it. Let me go back over it.
Let's put yep.
And poll. Let me do it again. Oh, okay. I see. I got you. Yeah. I got it.
I'll play some music while you get that going. Just share my screen then. Y'all make sure y'all vote. Let us know. By the time the music is done, we'll close it off and see where we're at with how the people feel. Sarnetta, share my screen and play the track so we don't have any dead space.
All right.
It's like this. Europa! It's Elvie Europa. Never forget me. Had to realize I was tripping from the jump. Life's hard. You could be the victim of the month all at once. I made life trickle from my tongue, so I didn't speak death when I gave it to my young. I told them get money, we paid. Look, the traffic make the neighbors shook. Mix baby with the baby powder. Every hour check your books is business. Without critical thinking, you cook. Don't overlook your queen. Let go of every rook. It's okay to treat pieces like pieces, but line. It's impeccable yet incredible. Speak the truth but still uneligible. I scribble it out in a tone that turn you vegetable. It's okay, I know you fucking hate it, but I made it from the places where niggas is underrated. Kept the cases, all dead bodies, no faces. This demon's on my block, the cops still racist, but I embrace it. This the Matrix with things so tasteless, but they still asking me where the steak is. These niggas vampires, I still get the steak in. Or perhaps I'm mistaken. Didn't grow up in the trap spot, but the spot is still vacant. Holes in the attic, so sporadic. We traveled to the basement, and just to keep warm, we would hold each other. Instead of now, when we hold each other. It's crazy how something the simplest time will make us change. Flipping our ways. I remember the time like MJ, then he died on stage. Half of my demons come from Egypt, and it feel like plagues. And you said we slaves, but we feel like slaves. I had to realize I was tripping from the jump. Roper. Had to realize I was tripping from the jump. Sometimes I be tripping. Is it mistakes that's stopping me from moving on? I don't know, you tell me. We moving on. Is it the world that's stopping me from being calm? I don't even know, I ain't figuring it out. But does it take an airport for you to get it plain? What if we was in my suitcase? Would you embrace Mary Jane? What if Superman grams was crammed in the Lois Lane? Do you think DC and Marvel or Marvel? What's inside a nigga brain? I grew strange with the hybrid, turned me Doctor Strange. Just a young black man trying coping with the pain.
There you guys have it, man. American Illuminati. He has crowned Aaron Yahudim as the champion. Both you brothers can have a closing statement. We'll start with Aaron Yahudim, the winner.
Hey man, how long is my statement, family?
Just try to keep it brief, 2-3 minutes, and then let
I like to share my screen if possible, man, because it has a lot to do with my closing statements.
Sayonara.
I'm asking to share it now.
Yeah, Sa has the controls. He'll get you in there in a second.
All right.
Well, since you got something to show, well, hey Don, would you like to have some closing words? Because I know you have to leave as well.
Yes, good debate, good show. Appreciate y'all, man. I'm sorry I got to take off. I'm kind of leaving in a hurry, but yeah, I appreciate y'all being here. As I always say, to the law and to the testimony, folks, if they speak not according to these, it's because there's no light in them. Pro Rizzo 1, I'm out. Appreciate you, Sonetta, for the stage, bro. Thank you, LV, for your labor of love. Aaron, I catch you on the wayside, bro. 1.
I appreciate you, fam.
Sonetta, can we get Yahudim's screen up, please? Any of you who like that music, man, just go over to the Clubhouse street, subscribe, become a member. A lot of great Clubhouse content, and we got the music popping off over there too. We appreciate Sonetta for opening up the platform to the UDL, myself, BlackJesusMinister. Make sure you go to all associated platforms and become a member so that you can stay in tune with the movement that's moving, or you can get moved on. Aaron Yahudim, it seems like Sonetta's he must be busy behind the controls for a minute, man.
Well, I ain't gotta share it then, man. I'll just read what I was attempting to share, all right?
Of course.
All right, so first off, I wanna give my appreciation to the judge, because I was under the assumption we weren't going to have a judge and that it was going to be an audience poll. And as soon as the debate started, I realized we did. And I'm just glad that he kept it fair. Just to you, Judge, and I'm sure our people were wondering the same. My source, I came out the gate saying that I truly believe emphatically that our ancestors were the writers of this Torah, which is, the world's most published and sought after bought book. Well, if you want to say the Bible. So I stand on this as a source 100%. This is my square. And that's why I continue to go back to it verse by verse to prove the hermeneutics of what I believe is our source. Now, I understand Orthodox history disagrees. That's why I heavily scrutinize the oppressorship of Orthodox history. Mind you, the majority of this Orthodox history comes from those that reigned over us, that enslaved us, hung us, lynched us, that named us and everything else. And I'll be bold enough to take the stand to say that I highly scrutinize, quote unquote, Orthodox and authorized history, because it's a contradiction for the most part to the Torah and Tanakh, which I do believe is our origin story. So in closing, here's what I wanted to share and read. This whole debate was about Genesis 15. So I'm going to read a portion that we didn't touch on, Genesis 15, verses 5 and 6. It says, and he, Yah, it says, and he brought him out and said to him, look up now to heaven and count the stars, if thou shalt be able to number them fully. And he said, thus shall thy seed be. A little backstory is Abram was 75 at this time, and even his wife didn't believe he would have children. No one believed Abram would have children at age 75, but the Creator said, look up to the stars and know that your seed will be like this, even at the age of 75. Now, verse 6 says, and Abram believed God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. All that Abram, our forefather, had to do was believe the Creator, and it was counted to him as righteousness. So I implore our people, to believe our Creator with what he's doing and the immense judgment that he's pouring out on these nations, and he will count you as well. I can't say he'll count you as righteous. I can't even say that, but a start of belief in what our Father is doing is a right step, and will prayerfully lead you into the instructions of Torah, seeing how we are the only people that are directionless. We have no ethnicity, nationality, no homeland. We have no homeland, people. We can't agree on a place to go, nor do we have kindred there to accept us. So I'm saying for us to believe in our Creator and believe in what he said he was doing, like our forefather Abram did. And my last thing to say is, I had a slide that says this, and it gives you every principle, every faith, every scientific measure that's applicable. And if you don't believe in this 400-year prophecy, you don't believe in anything. Why do I say that? The 400-year prophecy promises recompense for what happened to us and our ancestors from 400 years back. And if you don't believe in that, then you don't believe in you reap what you sow, which is what most Christians or Messianics believe in. You don't believe in Judaism, even if you call yourself a Jew, because it says an eye for an eye. You don't believe in spirituality or karma or anything like that if you don't believe that what goes around comes around. And you don't believe in the basic principles of science. Let's say you're an atheist and you're like, that don't faze me. You don't believe in the basic principles of science if you don't believe that for every action, there's an opposite but equal reaction. So what we're seeing occur to these nations, it's not just in the Torah, it's not just Genesis 15. It's applicable to every belief and lifestyle, even scientific principle that you claim to stand on. If you don't believe that recompense will come to these nations that did atrocities and things to us, then you don't even believe in what you claim to stand on. And with that, I give all credit and esteem to my Creator, who I do believe did put us here to be punished, and who is actively, tangibly, scientifically proven, judging these nations at an unprecedented time like no other. So with that being said, family, no more faith and belief over here. Every day that you turn on your TV and you see this downfall of these nations and the assimilation of an alliance of people that are dropping the dollar, you know this is real. The only way to prove this wrong is when everything changes and goes back to normal and America has an upward trajectory again. That's the only way to prove this prophecy wrong. I appreciate all y'all, man. I really do. Thank you.
Man, it's crazy. The ambulances is in the background, in the past. Hey, Sinetta, I see the Aboriginals done invaded the chat, man. They say in America too, man. They ain't playing. They want all the smoke. Listen, we got Aaron, the winner here. An amazing debate between you two brothers, man. But he was able to take out the veteran Pro Rizzo 1, and he did it in a fashion which is called the toughest environment. So let me say something about the toughest environment. Somebody said something about the toughest environment. They said that there is no excuses. You either show up or get packed up. The brother Aaron even told y'all that there was some objections in there, some things that wasn't clear, but at the tail end of it all, the brother showed up and he completed his objective. Sa, I turn it over to you. We appreciate you, man. You muted, brother.
I'm gonna say peace and black power to both of the debaters. Great job, great discipline and respect. So I'm gonna say good peace to y'all brothers, man.
Thank you. Peace.
All right. And if y'all really got what it takes, if y'all think that you really went through a storm, you are always welcome to come and sit down and see how you do in the toughest environment to be in. Come in and be questioned on your faith, on your book. You can come in and do that as well, and see where you stand at with some of the best minds that we have here. So, we do that sometime. We had Armin Rob McCarthy last night, and he was holding it down. He's a Christian minister, even though he got the name Armin Rob McCarthy. And some people say, how you got Armin Rob McCarthy, but you're a pastor? Because his father named him Armin Rob McCarthy. His father was more Kemetic studies. And so that's what he named him. But he grew up with his mother, and he became a Christian pastor. So he tried his best to hold it down, and he did all right, but he got spanked a little bit. He got spanked. So if you would like to come in one day, brothers, and test your information against some of the best minds that we have here, y'all welcome. All right.
Well, like I told you, Sarnetta, we're going to keep that pipeline open.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys on Clubhouse, they know the vision that I have for them. It's not to harbor them for myself. It's to give them the visibility they want. And the toughest environment is great for that, man. So once again, the door is open. Anything you need, and I'm a tap in with you, brother.
All right, my brother, no doubt. I got people that want to ask questions. I think Aborigine, are they up for questions right now or no?
Man, I'm here for any and all questions, man, because that's how we definitely concrete a good debate like this. I'm here for any and all questions.
Well, y'all familiar with the Aborigine brothers, right? Sisters.
Yeah, I'm familiar with AP. We got a real good relationship.
They believe that the slave trade didn't happen. Not all of them, but some of them. So they believe in that stuff there, that never really happened, So if y'all want to come in, y'all want to ask a question, turn on your camera so we can know who you are. You see us, we need to see who we talking to.
I'm gonna take
this ain't no hide and seek over here. This ain't no hide and seek. If you're scared to turn on the camera, don't even come on. All right, they scared to turn on the camera, so I'm gonna say peace to y'all, brothers, man. Peace. All right, y'all can be out.
Peace and grace.
Peace, brother.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom. Mm-hmm. Yep.